Hiyo everybody, Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about new motorcycles as we ride. Our very special guest today is Ducati's Multistrada V4S. That is a 1200cc V4 with just about every whiz-bang, gizmo, and doodad that you can get in motorcycling today, all for about $25,000. There's a lot to unpack here, no two ways about it. So let's see how all those features do on the daily ride. Let's go. Okie dokie, everybody. Ducati Multistrada V4S. Whew. I don't even know how we're going to talk about all the stuff we got to talk about. This might be a 45-minute long episode. And I'll just say that I'm not going to be able to talk about everything. Sorry. First thing I want to mention, predictably, is the radar system built into the nose of the bike here. There's one in the tail as well that informs the blind spot warning system and the adaptive cruise control. Big old beefy 330mm rotors, stylemic calipers, top of the line, everything in the braking system, typical Ducati stuff. Cross spoke wheels. This is kind of cool. So they are wire spoke rims, obviously, but they are also tubeless, which is pretty nifty. Very popular thing to have in the adventure touring segment these days, and Ducati has adopted that for the Multi V4. Here you have the 1158cc V4 Gran Turismo. Of course, there are valve springs in there. No Desmo system like on every other Ducati since, I don't know, God was a kid. And a fairly low rev ceiling and insanely long service intervals. Oil every 9,300 miles and valve clearance checks every 37,000 miles. So quite an adaptation of the V4 engine for adventure touring. Other stuff I want to talk about real quick, these crazy gills on the side of it here. So these are the radiators that sort of point in toward the center of the bike. As air comes in through the front, it gets pushed out this way. There's a radiator fan in there you can see. Maybe you can see. These little scoops here are not winglets for downforce, but rather to force air up toward where the warm air will be coming away from the radiator and push it away from the rider. Very specific example of this is this little slit here. This guy goes into a port that we probably won't be able to see inside here. It's next to the oil cooler there. So it's an intake port about this size, and the exit is about this size. Comes out right here. And as far as I can tell, that's made to create a sort of blade of air that comes out here and pushes air away from the rider, the warm air coming from the radiator. So a lot of thought went into keeping heat away from the rider. Ducatis do have a reputation for being warm on a warm day, and apparently Ducati has taken that to heart. Other than that, pretty basic architecture really. Yeah, steel tube trellis subframe, which is removable, as well as the passenger pegs, which double as the exhaust mount. A double-sided swing arm for this Multistrada V4. It's kind of cast into a trellis, which is kind of cool. Yeah, standard center stand with the travel pack that comes on this bike. Okay, I think that might be just about all we need to talk about. From here, we can fire it up and hit the road. Turn a little fob key here, fire up the 6.5-inch TFT, and we need an oil service. That happens with test bikes pretty frequently because it has less than 600 miles on it when they gave it to us. So yeah, that's the reason for that. And here we go. Alrighty, everybody. V4 Gran Turismo. I'm excited about this one. Okie doke, hitting the road. I'm going to jump right into specs because, like I said, there is so much to talk about. This is a $24,700 motorcycle as it sits. It should actually have saddlebags on it. With that, you get a whole bunch of features: heated grips, heated seat, and the radar package, as well as the spoked wheels, which are an option. On the Daily Rider scales, the Multistrada V4 with a full tank weighed in at 570 pounds. Again, that's with all 5.8 gallons of fuel in the tank. The engine, as I said, is just under 1200 cc's. Claimed horsepower is 170, and claimed torque is 92 foot-pounds, which is yeah, a lot less than the Superbike, obviously. But you get those nice long valve intervals by having an engine that's relatively under-stressed. That's the whole idea there. The last spec we usually talk about is seat height, and that is adjustable between 33.1 inches and 33.9 inches. I have it in the upper position right now. I'm 6'2". I can flat foot in the upper position at almost 34 inches. I think that it does not feel as high as they claim, to be honest. It's not, yeah, it doesn't feel like a 34-inch seat height to me. Another variable with this bike, of course, is that it has adjustable preload in the shock. So I have the preload set pretty low just for one rider right now, so it's relatively soft and plush. If I dial a whole bunch of preload in with the dash, which we'll mess with later, the bike stiffens up quite a bit, and it does get a little bit taller. So seat heights are kind of a nebulous measurement in the age of adjustable preload and adjustable seat heights. But all I'll say about that again is that it doesn't feel quite as tall as it reads on paper. Speaking of the seat, it is a bone-chilling 59 degrees here in Los Angeles. So I'm gonna go down in my little menu here and go to heated seat and turn it to low. Just cook my buns a little bit. Why not? I got the heated grips on as well. There are 3 settings: low, medium, high. Very, very nice feature, heated grips. I am so much a fan of heated grips. It's hard for me to even put it into words. While we're on the topic of seats and handlebars, the ergonomics on this bike are quite good. I often talk about how comfortable and reasonable adventure touring bikes are, and this is a very expensive adventure touring bike, and therefore some lengths have been gone to make sure that it's comfortable, and it really is. The seat's nice. The handlebars are in a really nice position. They're wide, but it puts you in a really commanding position, nice and upright, feet right underneath your upper leg. Just really comfortable, reasonable place to be, whether you're city, dirt road, freeway, whatever. Let's get after that 170 horsepower real quick here. Woo. That is way better than a cup of coffee to wake you up in the morning. And yes, since you're looking at the dash, it is 10 o'clock in the morning. Not saying I just got up or anything, but not a coffee drinker, so I like 170 horsepower. That's my preferred method. Okie dokie! Out on the freeway, where this motorcycle is also very comfortable. One thing I don't want to forget to talk about is the adjustable wind protection, which is not only adjustable, but extremely easy to adjust. Put it wherever you want, and it stays there. But as you push, it unlocks. So it's just an excellent system. My one complaint about it is that it's kind of chonky to look at. It's not quite as sexy from an engineering standpoint as I don't know, the BMW system, which is like a little cast aluminum thing that kind of hinges and as you twist it. But as far as ease of use, it's absolutely brilliant. Because we're on the open road, we're going to experiment with that radar. So I'm going to turn on cruise control. Adaptive cruise is set, and here we go. We're behind this Toyota Camry here, and I can set the cruise to we'll set it to 85. Here we go, trundle along 73 miles an hour. As things happen with this car, we can experiment with how it reacts to those things. But yeah, this is one of the big features of this bike, and the first time I've experienced it in motorcycle form, the adaptive cruise control, and I gotta say, I've been pretty impressed so far. So I need to change lanes here. I'm gonna pull in behind this truck. I am not gonna touch the throttle. It's gonna freak me out a little bit, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Oh, this car's cutting me off. This is a good test, actually. There we go, the bike's slowing down, applying the brakes. I'm covering the rear brake, for those of you thinking that I'm completely suicidal. But there we go. Little merge interchange. Someone pulled in front of me, and the bike did absolutely everything. Slowed down, sped up, and I didn't touch the throttle or the brake. It is very spooky to trust the system to do that stuff. And at first I was pretty wary of it. Here we go. So truck's pulling out of my way. Cruise is set for a lot more than 56 miles an hour. And here we go, rolling on the throttle. And we're off. And now it's sensing the truck in front up there. And it's already slowing down a little bit. Rolling off the throttle to make sure that we don't catch up too fast. There we go. Speed matched again. If it looks like I'm following too close, that's fair. So I'm going to go into the adaptive cruise menu while not rear-ending this truck and set it from medium. So there's near, medium, far, and very far. So I'm going to set it to very far, follow distance, and we'll let it settle out here. But as you can see, the truck is getting farther away from me. And you might notice that this light went off, which is blind spot detection for that white Corolla that just went by. And there's another truck coming up on the left. So now we can watch this mirror. There it goes, letting me know that there's a truck in the blind spot. Pretty cool. Pretty basic technology in the automotive field, I think. Lots of you out there have probably used a car that has adaptive cruise. But yeah, like I said, first motorcycle that I've used with it, and in general I'm very impressed with the application of the radar, whether it's the blind spot warning or the adaptive cruise control. One other thing about the blind spot detectors, you can adjust the brightness of this light to 3 different settings, so that's kind of a nice feature. I didn't actually find it to be particularly useful, but just so you know, you can do that. And yes, I checked over my shoulder because I'm a creature of habit and I do trust the system, but yeah, never hurts to be sure, I suppose. Okie dokie, so I am cruising along at the appropriate speed and appropriate following distance behind this pickup truck. I have the safety of a radar system to get off the throttle if someone slams on their brakes and warn me that something's happening. My hands are warm from the heated grips, my butt is warm from the heated seat. I do not have to use the clutch if I don't want to because I have a quick shifter, I have adjustable wind protection, I have power ports, I even have a little cubby right here where I can put my phone and let it charge. So, it's the perfect motorcycle, right? Well, there is one thing that we usually talk about on the highway that I'd like to address, which is fuel range. And the fuel range isn't awesome. I have gotten somewhere between 30 and 35 miles to the gallon at all the fuel mileage figures I've collected for this bike, which of course is pretty bad for a motorcycle, realistically. That's sort of like Aprilia Tuono level, which is like a famously inefficient motor because it's a big V4 that makes a lot of horsepower. You know, the more cylinders you have there, the more power you make, the more fuel you got to use. And despite this engine being in a relatively mild state of tune, it does use quite a bit of fuel. And despite having a 5.8 gallon fuel tank, which is pretty big or very reasonable, I only got about 170 miles out of a tank. That was, I think, my max 171, and the dash was showing 2 miles of range. I didn't put all the gas that it could have taken into it, so you know, I didn't actually use all the gas to go 170 miles, but you're going to want to fill up at about that time unless you want to really push it. Now we've slowed down a lot and I want to downshift, but then I'm going to ruin the cruise, right? Not so. Just pop down into 4th gear, light clutch pull or the quick shifter, and the bike is totally okay with that. Adaptive cruise keeps on trucking. The way to abort adaptive cruise is to switch it off on the handhold here, or roll off the throttle, or touch the brake. But otherwise, as you can see, using the quick shifter, back up to 6th gear, adaptive cruise, still trucking. And to be very honest with you, I was kind of surprised that they let you shift with adaptive cruise on, just because I assumed that it would not let you do that or want you to do that, but it does, and it seems to work. And I know some of you are probably flabbergasted that I have my hand away from the throttle and away from the brake in traffic, and you think I'm being wildly irresponsible. Part of it is that I trust the system and I think it's pretty good, and part of it is that I'm doing it to illustrate the system working. So don't think that I just ride around with no hands all the time just because I can, I promise. Okay, last test of adaptive cruise. We're coming up to a red light. I'm pulling in behind this car here and we're going to watch. I'm going to hover my hand over the throttle. There we go. It's applying brake, slowing way down, you'll see the dash. Ooh! There we go. Adaptive cruise off. It does not come to a complete stop, but it does slow down pretty hard, if necessary, to avoid getting too close to the vehicle in front. So that's just about all the time we have for adaptive cruise. I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me. We put the windshield down. We're going to talk about how this sucker handles trundling around a neighborhood. Oop. Didn't make it to the first stop sign. Oh, I bet I know what happened. I'm in touring mode, obviously. There are multiple ride modes on the Multistrada, so I should probably put it in Enduro, Touring, Sport, Urban. Urban, obviously. Like, you have to put it in urban mode if you want it to handle well in an urban setting. Of course, that's not true, but we're going to put it in urban just to navigate these city streets here and talk about what the ride modes do exactly. Nope, didn't get through that stop sign either. Another thing urban does is it tones down the throttle response quite a bit. It makes the engine feel a lot more mellow, less peak horsepower, a less sharp response from the throttle when you twist it, and sure enough, it's good for riding around town, in my opinion. It feels sort of similar to the Enduro map on the bike, which is the off-road map. Oh, I made it through that stop sign, but I don't think I made it to 0 miles an hour, so technically I deserve a ticket. But in general, the throttle response in this bike is quite good, and the engine is really docile. You know, this bike has the V4 engine that's from the Panigale, from the Street Fighter, both of which are surprisingly easy to manage, I think, considering the high performance factor that they have. But this engine is even more so. It's really pleasant. We'll put it in third gear here, and this is idle, so we're just chug-a-lugging along here. 1200 RPM. I'll roll the throttle on. We'll get a little shudder, but just pulls right up. Nice, easy engine to use, and everything else about the interface with the rider from a mechanical standpoint. Yeah, there we go. Got my foot to stop. Everything else about the rider interface from a mechanical standpoint is excellent. Clutch feel is quite good. The brakes are really sharp and strong. And I know what you're thinking. For 25 grand, it better be. And yeah, I agree. But to Ducati's credit, is damn good. There's absolutely no way we can go through this dash and all its features in one stoplight, but we'll try and get one later where we have a little more time. That's in the lowest possible power mode, by the way. It still has an awful lot of get up and go. I just realized I didn't talk about the mirrors, how the mirrors actually work on the freeway, which is normally what I do, but I was talking about the blind spot thing and adaptive cruise and blah blah blah. Finally a bike to make Corvette guy jealous. What do you think? It's half of a V8, Corvette guy. V4. Okay, maybe next time. Anyway, the mirrors. They're quite good. Quite good. It's Ducati, I don't think, has the best reputation for making mirrors practical, because the bikes are, you know, oftentimes more form than function sometimes. But the Multistrada is not that. It is, I wouldn't say function over form, but equal parts, because stuff like that, all little stuff, like I said, switch gear, mirrors, quick shifter, all that stuff is very good. Here we are on Lover's Lane. Passenger accommodations on the Multistrada V4 are also quite good. The seat, for example, the passenger seat is also heated, which is a very smart addition for Ducati to make, because if you're gonna, you know, spend $25,000 on a motorcycle, say, you want your roommate, life partner, spouse, whatever, to support it, well, nothing helps them believe in your dream quite like a warm set of buns as they're cruising down the highway. My lady friend loves a heated seat and reported that good legroom, nice soft saddle, and yeah, in general, good marks for the passenger accommodations on the Multistrada, which is good news for anyone who wants to take this thing up touring. Okie dokie. I'm gonna take a moment here to put this sucker in touring mode, because we're coming up on our twisty road. And I'm gonna try and get out in traffic ahead of this Chevy Bolt, whatever, something like that. Oh my goodness. Oh, looks like we're catching up to a van already. It's kind of a bummer, but I can tell you that I did ride the Multistrada V4 on a bunch of twisty roads, both by myself and 2-up, and was just really impressed with how it handles. It's light to the touch and predictable and even and just confidence inspiring. Like, you want to lean the thing over. It almost eggs you on in a way that you wouldn't expect a bike to do when it weighs the better part of 600 pounds. So yeah, even though we're stuck in traffic here, I can report that the bike handles really well. It has more of the feel of a Multistrada than I expected it to. I kind of thought the engine was really going to change the dynamic of the machine in a way that I wasn't sure if it was going to be good or bad, but it really does remind me of a Multistrada in how much poise it has on a twisty road, and even how it fires off of corners, and how the front end feels going into a sharp curve, something like that, which I think is in general quite a good thing. I did get a couple questions about the 19-inch front wheel and saying, do you think it's lost something by going to a 19-inch front wheel from the 17-inch front wheel that the Multistrada has historically always had? And I don't think so. No, I don't. I do think that the transition from the 1200 to the 1260, they changed the chassis a bit somewhere in there, and now I'm forgetting exactly when it happened, but I'm pretty sure it was when they went to the 1260 engine. And to me, the bike did lose a little bit of its edge in that transition. And Ducati was adamant when I rode that bike for the first time that, you know, oh, it handles just as well as the previous model, but I just didn't think so. I really felt like the Multistrada era from whatever it was, 2012 to 2015 maybe, yeah, it had the skyhook suspension, the adaptive suspension, but it was just, it had the sort of roots of that sport bike on stilts, and it really just felt to me more aggressive and pointy. So this bike does not feel worse than the 1260, I don't think, but in general I do think the Multistrada over the past number of years has moved in a direction that is a little less razor sharp and agile than the bike from 6 or 10 years ago. But to be clear, I don't want that to be completely contradictory to what I said before. I still think it handles really well. It was absurdly sporty before. Now it's just good, and like I said, very confidence inspiring and really fun on a twisty road, even if it's not quite as twitchy and light on its feet as it was before. Jesus. Oh my god. It's really fun. And it's so smooth. This engine is so smooth. It's just like, we experimented around town with pulling up straight up from idle in like 3rd gear. And it'll give you, you know, if you whack the throttle open way down there, it'll give you some shudders and shakes like you'd expect. But in general, just anything, I mean, a couple thousand RPM, few thousand RPM, it's just really nice. You just get this nice pulse, almost like you're on a big diesel powered boat or something. It's sort of thrum that you can feel in your feet and your hands. It just feels substantial and powerful, but smooth. It's very good. It's probably one of the reasons that I got 31 miles to the gallon on one of my tanks, because it can't help twisting the grip. It makes me happy. I will say the only other big V4 adventure touring bike that I can think of, that I can remember riding, was Honda's VFR 1200X, which I think might have been called the Cross Tourer in Europe, maybe elsewhere in the world. And excellent engine, a lot of fun, but just such a lump. I mean, so big and heavy. I think that bike was 630 pounds with a full tank, so another 60 pounds more than this bike. So I guess where I'm going with that is that Ducati should be commended for making a big V4 that is smooth and makes a lot of power and is a great sport touring mill, and doing so without making it an absolute monster, monolith that they have to mount in the frame. This engine, I believe, is lighter than the 1260 V-twin that it replaces, that was in the Multistrada before. So that's really I don't know, that's notable in my mind. So, well done, however you say that in Italian. All right, another red light. We can talk about brakes for just a second, which are just excellent, tremendous. You really wouldn't know that the bike weighs so much. And there's one other thing I want to talk about the engine while we're at this traffic light. I'm going to open my visor just in case that helps you hear the engine a little bit. But it does the same thing that the Street Fighter and Panigale do while at idle at a certain temperature. It deactivates the rear two cylinders to try and save the rider and the passenger from some of the engine heat coming out of those headers. So the rear two cylinders are deactivated. Now I'm going to put it in first gear, and as I let the clutch out, you can just hear it adds a little bit of fuel and you hear the other two cylinders kick in. Anyway, it's a nifty feature. If you can't hear it, trust me. One thing I do want to address at some point on this ride, because I think it's worth noting, is that I do like all the technology in this bike. I think the adaptive cruise is quite good, and I think it's a legitimate safety feature, and I think it bodes well for bikes in the future. But I will say that Ducati talked me through setting up navigation, which is possible on this bike. You can set up navigation so that you get turn-by-turn directions on the TFT dash right here. It requires linking your downloading two different apps, making sure those apps are talking to each other, making sure the phone is plugged in and in the little cubby, which yes does hold a full-size modern cell phone, iPhone 11 anyway is what I tested. But it's just a very, very convoluted system, and you have to set it up so that your phone doesn't go to sleep, because if it goes to sleep it stops talking to the bike and the app doesn't work. So it's nifty. You can set it up where it gives you directions, it gives you live traffic, turn by turn on the dash, which is just really useful. It's cool technology. But all the hoops that I had to jump through, and as many times as it crashed while I was using it, I just thought, I don't think that this is better than just having Google directions piped into my headset. And I think it's just one step too far, or maybe not a step too far, but a step too soon, because it just wasn't, it's not ready in my opinion. It's a cool feature, but more trouble than it's worth. And there we go, we are in enduro mode, front only ABS, no traction control, which is how I have it set up. And here we go. Can you take a $25,000 bike off-road? Yes. Is it any good? Well, let's find out. Yep. Woo! Sideways and everything. Oh boy. I'm gonna hit the big jump. Gosh darn it. Small jump in the books. Big jump. Here we go. Ugh. I mean, I would hit a jump twice that size on this bike. One of the cool things about that semi-active suspension, actually, is you can boost it. When it senses the impact of hitting the ground like that, it just dials up the damping, and you don't bottom out. Feels like you could land off the top of a semi-truck, frankly. But anyway, got to move on. We got to put the bike in sport, and of course find out whether or not it can wheelie. I don't know. I mean, do you think is 170 horsepower enough to get it to do a wheelie? I guess we should find out. Oh my god, what an absolutely insane vehicle. Yeah, just took it off a jump, landed, didn't bottom out, felt fine, got Swayze in the dirt, and then ripped a huge wheelie. And I would take it on a canyon road all day and never be bored. So yes, it's an expensive bike. They all are. KTM 1290 Super Adventure S, BMW R1250 GS. They're expensive and heavy. But to me, that's where the complaints end. It's a fantastic machine. It's so good. It's really fun. It's capable. It's hard to argue with. And away we go. Okay, let's see if we can back it in, shall we? Oh my god. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. I'm gonna do it again. It's like riding a supermoto bike. Like you just, I mean, just the poise of the chassis is flabbergasting, frankly. Whew. What a ride, everybody. We're here. Do a quick U-turn test. Anybody? I like the U-turn test. Looking forward to that. So here we go. Starting on our line here. Cranking it full lock. Can we get it in less than 2 spaces? Woo! Just barely. That's pretty good. So that's better than, how many U-turn tests have we done now? Not that many, I suppose. It's better than a street triple. Maybe not quite as good as the Tiger 850 Sport from Triumph, but that might not be live on YouTube, so maybe forget that I said that. Jeez, we covered a lot of ground. Oh, look at that. We got some mud splatter up on the fender. Nice. Here you go. One last listen to that engine. Sounds pretty mean, does it not? That was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun, because I had a blast. So now we're going to answer some Instagram questions, of course. And then we're going to put this baby on the Daily Rider leaderboard, and then I can let you get on with the rest of your life. Okie doke, jumping into Instagram questions. Oops, I'm not ready, you guys. I thought I was ready, but I'm not ready. First one from Petizo1. How's it going, Petizo? Good to hear from you again. Petizo says, sometimes adaptive cruise in my car can be abrupt, but usually almost imperceptible. Not sure how I feel about it on a motorcycle. Is it smooth in deceleration? So hopefully that test of the adaptive cruise that we did answers your question. It can be a little abrupt, yeah. But in general, I was really impressed with it, and I think that most people that try the system would be as well. Next question is from Tippy Rider, who asks, from a practical standpoint, how much better is it than a 950 multi? This is a good question. I meant to talk about that, and I'm glad I remembered via Tippy Rider. Every time I ride a multi 950, I always sort of thought, why would you get the 1200 or the 1260 or whatever? It's just like, it was fast and had lots of features and TFT dash and cruise and luggage, and it just had all the things. And like, I just thought, do I need more power than this? I don't think I really do. I haven't ridden them completely back to back, but I will say that I think that the Multistrada V4S does a lot for the Multistrada line, in so much it differentiates this bike from the Multi 950 because the engine is so different and it does have a different character. So I can't say how much better it is. I mean, it has more features. So if adaptive cruise is important to you, then obviously that's something you can get with this that you can't with the 950. But from a sort of chassis handling standpoint and a capability standpoint, they're similar, frankly. But I do like that the the character of the bike changed a lot with the V4 engine in this bike. So I hope that helps answer your question. Not John Massey doesn't have a question. He has a statement. You obviously need to compare it to the S1000 XR. So yes, sir, not John Massey. So S1000 XR is really leaning hard into the sport bike on stilts, to borrow the expression I used earlier. It's supposed to be sort of like rigid and mean and very, very sporty, because BMW figures if you want a tall touring bike and an adventure touring bike, you get a GS. Whereas Ducati doesn't have that. They don't have like, oh, you get the other one. So the Multistrada V4 is very sporty and excellent on a twisty road, but it's probably slower around a racetrack than an S1000 XR, simply because BMW has leaned so hard into that bike being really vicious and sporty when you ask it to be. Hamachikama asks, I have a 2015 1200S and throttle delivery is not smooth at low RPMs, which often makes rolling on while completing a turn a herky-jerky affair. How does the new bike fare, taking into consideration that big front wheel? Yeah, I say this question. I don't actually know what the big front wheel has to do with herky-jerky throttle response. But anyway, hopefully I covered that in the section where we went up the hill in the city, and I experimented with roll-on from idle. It is very docile. It is more manageable, surprisingly, than the old V-twin, in my opinion, which I don't think people were expecting, because this engine sort of ostensibly came from the Panigale and the Street Fighter, but it is very docile, very easy to use. I think more so than the old engine. Florian Steinegger asked, do you think that this level of technology makes this bike feel safer to ride, or is it not that important? I do think it feels safer to ride. Yeah, I think that there's a lot there's some stuff that we could do with radar on motorcycles to help people. The blind spot warning is great. I'd love to see blind spot warning on MT-03s, beginner small bikes for new and returning riders. I think the blind spot warning thing is great, and I want to see that. The adaptive cruise is a fun luxury, but I do think it makes the rider safer in so much as the radar might spot something that the rider doesn't, or the rider's distracted by looking at a flying V of geese above, or steam coming off a lake, or the dashboard, or whatever. I don't know. I think it's has potential to make a bike safer. Yeah. So I don't think it's crucial, but I do think it bodes well for the future, and I like the application on this bike. CD Toxy, maybe that's the name. Asks Zack Quartz, how big is that phone holder? USB port always powered or with key only? Yeah, so there is a USB port in here. You can plug in your phone. This is an iPhone 11. It goes in there and it goes pretty far down there. So it's like, I don't know, it's pretty big. Width-wise, an iPhone 11 is just about all you want with a case. But it does have room for, that or granola bars, if you need to plug your granola bars into a USB port. And it is only powered when the bike is on. When the key is off, you don't get juice to that, so that you don't drain the battery, presumably. Last question from Adam Sky Tattoos. GPS navigation baked in the TFT Dash is a big selling point to long-distance touring riders like myself. How does its functionality compare to an aftermarket periphery GPS device? Yes, so we covered that a little bit. I think that the turn-by-turn stuff that they built into the dash that you can do via phone and apps is cool, but realistically not as good as a mount that you'd put on your handlebar, or the BMW systems that have the sort of auxiliary GPS from Garmin. I think that they have mounts built in from the factory. To me, that's, if you really want, that kind of thing, that's what you want. They're still not there yet with the application of navigation into motorcycle dashboards, with the possible exception of Apple CarPlay on the Goldwing, for example, which can be pretty slick because CarPlay has so much development behind it. But until always something to forge ahead to, always more bridges to cross for motorcycling. But this is a big step, the first radar equipped bike on Daily Rider. I had a blast. Let's put it on the Daily Rider leaderboard, see where it stacks up. All right, everybody, here we are, Daily Rider leaderboard. I'm staying next to the Multi V4. Pushed it inside here for this part of the ceremony where we talk about where the Multistrada V4S falls on the Daily Rider leaderboard. As a friendly reminder here, there is the top of the leaderboard, Kawasaki versus 650, Tenere 700, Africa Twin, Adventure Sports. And I'm going to tell you, I've been standing here for a long time now. I don't know where to go. I don't know where we're going with this. Is a Multistrada V4S better than an Africa Twin Adventure Sport? Realistically, we're playing with the podium here. I went 328 miles, I believe, on one tank of gas on an Africa Twin Adventure Sports. The Africa Twin Adventure Sports is huge though, and it's a little bit cumbersome. And speaking of cumbersome, the dash and all the touch screen and the features and stuff aren't as good as the Ducati. I think the Ducati is just a little bit more approachable. It's a little bit easier to ride. And certainly a little bit easier to push around in your dooryard. So I think it's better. I think a Multistrada is better than an Africa Twin. So I think I'm giving it the nod there. Is it better than a Tenere 700? Tenere 700 doesn't have the range. So there you're tit for tat. At that point, you're talking about character and usability, and the Tenere 700 is a great bike, but it's no Multistrada V4. I mean, this bike goes and stops and turns better than that bike. Again, Tenere 700, better off-road. So it does have, it has some versatility there. That's good. But yeah, just from a feature standpoint and a heated this and that standpoint, it's a lot of motorcycle that you get, So yeah, I think it's better than a Tenere 700. So the big kahuna, everybody, is it better than a Kawasaki versus 650? And some of you are laughing. I get it. You're like, obviously, of course a Multistrada is better than a Versus 650. What the hell is he smoking? The only thing that it's worse at is that it's 3 times the price. Range. Versus has got to be 250 miles, like better part of 300 miles on a tank of gas in a Versus 650 with luggage. And Versus does have adjustable wind protection. Not from the cockpit really, but it does have that. Versus 650 is also a little smaller.
you know, easier, more approachable, easier to get on, easier to push around in your driveway or garage if that's the thing you're worried about. As I said, this is going to be controversial, but here goes. Multistrada V4S going on the leaderboard, and yes, it goes at the tippy top. And I know you're thinking, oh, you know, he's just fallen in love with of course he loves the $25,000 bike. I want to be clear here. The Kawasaki Versys 650 LT is as good, if not better, as a motorcycle than the Multistrada V4S as a daily rider. Sure, it doesn't have all the features that you know, heated grips, heated seat, that kind of thing, TFT dash, but it's as good to get you to work. It's the radar that tips me over the edge. That is a legitimately groundbreaking, dynamic, helpful safety feature. And maybe you don't have any blind spots on your daily ride, and maybe you don't have $25,000 in the bank to spend on a motorcycle, in which case you should get yourself a Versys 650 if you want. Or any of the other ones up here on the upper part of the board I would recommend. Obviously, they're all excellent motorcycles in their own right. But yeah, I gotta give it the nod. I don't know what your bank account looks like, and may the best bike win. I'm very impressed with the Multistrada V4. It's gentler and more reasonable than I ever expected it to be, while still maintaining that fire and sporting capability that the Multistrada has always had. And it'll tell you when you're going to turn into a car on the freeway. I know. It's I'm getting a little emotional here. You know, I've shed a single tear for the Versys 650, but it's still in very high standing. That's the end of this episode of Daily Rider, everybody. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time on Daily Rider.
Questionable weather conditions here. Thought we might get rained on. We might still, actually. But we're all waterproofed up. Got waterproof boots, waterproof gloves, pants, jacket. I actually don't think the camera is waterproof with the audio plugged into it. But yeah, worried about me and not the camera. That's not super flattering. But anyway, hopefully we don't get rained on.